Welcome back, folks, to the random video blog where I, Graham Giason Matthews, give my rambling thoughts in the wrestling world, share some stories, etc., etc. We are only 3 weeks away from Christmas, 2 weeks away from Star Wars 7 this exact same Friday, and a little over 1 week away from TLC. I know right now it's not shaping up to be the strongest card, but yours truly will be there along with RJ and a few others as well. It's going to be a great time. Can't wait for it. It's going to be a great show. Looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, though, I did want to do a video here today before the end of the year, and we'll probably properly title it, Was My Favorite Year in Wrestling. 2011 was, in WWE. Only because 2015, as I've said time and time before, with the exception of the past month or two, has been my favorite year in wrestling. And the fall always sucks, and that's kind of no surprise, really. But everything else leading up to SummerSlam and a little bit afterwards has been my favorite year in wrestling, hands down, from all the shows that I've been to and everything that happened in WWE just in general that's happened in the past 12 months has been absolutely amazing. And, without a doubt, since 2008, since I started watching WWE, my favorite year in wrestling. Since I've been a fan, I'm not counting like 2002 or 2005 and other years that I've talked about that I've gone back and watched on the network. Since I've been a fan, my favorite year has always been 2011 up until this year. So why is 2011 my favorite year in wrestling is a common question that I typically get. So I figured I would list not 5, not 10, but 15 reasons why 2011 was such a special year for me. And I know I said in hashtag AskGSM the all-around greatest year for WWE. I didn't really take into consideration like the 80s or the 90s. I really only talked about the years that I'm familiar with. And I wasn't watching this period in time, obviously, but I said 2002. Now, not to say that 2011 was all around a phenomenal year, but as said as it says in the title of this video, my favorite year, not best year, but favorite year, because there were some parts of that year were a little shaky, but it was still my favorite year up until 2015 in WWE. So kicking off with the first reason was Cody Rhodes' Intercontinental Championship run, which I thought was great. He won the belt shortly before SummerSlam. Why they didn't do the title change at SummerSlam, I have no idea, because they literally did it like 2 days before on SmackDown. But I think it's a run, I wouldn't call it underrated, because I think a lot of people recognized how good that run was, and it could have been booked a little bit better towards the end, but he had some really good feuds with Randy Orton, with Booker T, and with a few others as well, and John Morrison, Ted DiBiase, and he had a lot of successful title defenses before he dropped it, which I thought was a mistake to Big Show at WrestleMania. I would have done it either to Goldust or not done that match at all. I thought Cody Rhodes and Big Show was just a stupid feud, and have Big Show be the one to end his near 7-month reign as champion I thought was so dumb. But anyway, that aside, that was in 2012, that was not in 2011. From August onward, I thought Cody Rhodes was the fucking man. He won the belt in August. He had that feud with Orton. He lost the feud, but had some really good matches with him, and he would beat Orton at a few points on like Raw and SmackDown and shit. But while he was still champion after that feud had taken place, he got rid of the mask, he put on knee pads, the guy looked like a goddamn star at Survivor Series. Got one of the biggest pops in the entire show, bigger than Wade Barrett, who was the team captain for that match, and the match that he wrestled in at that event. And the guy was on his way to becoming a world champion in this company. That great feud with Booker T, a pretty good match at TLC, and a very good match in the first SmackDown of 2012. But still, I thought Cody Rhodes above and beyond was one of the highlights of the SmackDown brand in 2011. So after that, also on the SmackDown brand was the Barrett Barrage, which was also kind of going on around that time as well, in the latter half of 2011. Now, a lot of people didn't really like the idea of a Barrett Barrage, or not the idea of it, but just the title or the name of it, a Barrett Barrage. It just sounded dumb. I didn't really care, but anyway, I thought it was a great way to kind of rejuvenate Wade Barrett. I almost said Bad News Barrett there for a second, but yeah, Wade Barrett, because the whole first half of 2011 for him absolutely sucked. The whole core shit was terrible. It was doomed to fail from the start. There was a little intrigue there at first, but when they didn't go with the Nexus core feud, which I thought was obvious, then it was just doomed to fail. They lost every single week. They were the epitome of losers that year. Probably one of the biggest epic failures in WWE at that point. But after that, in the second half of the year, after he beat Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam, he went on this Barrett Barrage, like I said. He got a few wins. They gave him some direction, gave him a huge win at Survivor Series. He would lose to Orton at TLC, but he would, quote-unquote, injure him, I believe, in the final SmackDown of that year. So Barrett was another guy that was on fire that they dropped the ball on huge in 2012. I know he got injured, but even before that, they probably weren't going to do anything with him. He was another guy I felt like was on fire at that point in time in 2011. Ted DiBiase coming in at number 3. Who, I mean, I may be in the minority here, but I thought his babyface turn was very fun. I thought it was long overdue, obviously. I thought he worked well as a babyface. He was a natural babyface. Like I said, it came about 2 to 3 years too late. just because I think he was, he starred in the Marine too, and there had been plans dating back to late 2008 from what I can recall, that he was going to come back and feud with Randy Orton, either going into WrestleMania or WrestleMania 26 or whatever it might have been, and it just never came to fruition. The legacy, the biggest star coming out of that group at the time was Randy Orton. They turned him babyface, and they kept Rhodes, they put him on SmackDown, and Ted DiBiase got the short end of the stick on Raw. He got his father's gimmick. Rarely ever gets over. It didn't work with Ted DiBiase, but like I said, they finally turned him babyface in late 2011, and the whole DiBiase posse thing, which was cool. Again, way too overdue. They never really did anything with it, but it was still fun in my opinion, and they had a nice little feud with Cody Rhodes, the match I had long awaited for at Night of Champions, which was pretty good. They could have done a lot more with the feud than they did, but I thought it was fun for while it lasted, and unfortunately, kind of like the last time he ever really did anything in the company. He got hurt in 2012, and he left the company in mid-2013 after they never really utilized him on TV. So coming in at reason number 4, Alberto Del Rio's destiny. It is my destiny to become the WWE champion. I know the accent is terrible, please disregard that, but Del Rio was on fucking fire that year. And notice how, like, all these people that I'm mentioning here, this was like the peak of their respective careers for a lot of these guys, and it's really a shame that none of them are still being pushed. But anyway, Alberto Del Rio was another guy that I thought was, and he did become a huge part of 2011. Other than CM Punk, 2011 was the year of Alberto Del Rio. He won the first ever and only 40-man Royal Rumble match, one of my favorite in recent memory. That year, the 40-man Royal Rumble match, he beat Kofi Kingston at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, had a really good match, both really good matches with Edge and Christian at WrestleMania and Extreme Rules respectively. Beat Big Show at not over the limit, Capital Punishment, a terrible pay-per-view, which one of the few parts of 2011 I wished I would forget. And he would win Money in the Bank, cash in at SummerSlam, become WWE champion. And honestly, it was really all downhill from there. I thought the reign was good, but they cut it short way too quickly to John Cena. I still pinpoint that exact moment when he lost to John Cena in Night of Champions as when he really started to crumble. Not the loss to Edge, not the loss to Christian, but rather that loss to John Cena at Night of Champions after a freaking month-long reign as WWE champion. I thought ruined any momentum he had. And yes, he won the title back a mere 2 weeks later at Hell in a Cell, but by that point, no one gave a shit. And his reign was a flop, and it was overshadowed by Punk and Triple H and John Cena and RTruth and The Rock and everything else, and no one gave a two shits about the guy. I think he lost to fucking Big Show of all people in like an episode of SmackDown or something. But anyway, before that though, for the first 9 months of that year, Del Rio was on fire. I wouldn't call him one of my favorites, but I did really enjoy his heel run throughout that year. And I mean, people, he doesn't get real heat today, but people have said like, oh, he never really got any heel heat. He was never over. And I completely am against that. I'm completely in defense of Del Rio in this respect, that when you look back at the Rumble, at Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, the guy was getting great heat. He was on a fucking roll. Even after he lost at WrestleMania in Extreme Rules, people still cared about the guy and his destiny. They popped big for the cash-in at SummerSlam. And then he dropped the belt and it was all downhill from there. And I still don't care about him 4 years later. But regardless, though, Del Rio's destiny was a huge part of 2011 for the first 9 months or so. So after that, we had, I'll try to abbreviate some of these reasons because we're almost at 10 minutes here and I'm only at reason number 5. But I hate to go on a tangent, but I just love this year so much. Number 5 was not technically a part of WWE programming, but it still was a part of WWE in 2011. Tough Enough. Which is why I was so disappointed with this past season. It started out well, but it really kind of went to shit by mid-season when they started getting rid of people who deserved to stay there, like Mata and a few others as well. Patrick, of course, and a number of others. But in 2011, I freaking love Tough Enough. And this is coming from someone that was not around for the first few seasons of the show. I thought, and even hearing from people who were watching at that point in time, that were watching in 02, 03, 04, or whenever the other seasons were, that they said this season was above and beyond better than those, because this was all about really the reality of it, and it really was truly the reality. I'm sure they gave them storylines and shit like that like this past season, but it wasn't as over the top. It didn't feel like a fucking game show. I thought it was very, very fun. You got the inside and outside perspective of these competitors. A lot of people are in Lucha Underground today. Matt Cross, I know, is Son of Havoc in Lucha Underground. Ivelisse is Ivelisse, I believe, and just her same name, in Lucha Underground, as well as Marty, who I interviewed on Spoilers Podcast a couple years ago. I'm pretty sure the interview's on the channel, but cheap plug. He was a great talent too. Luke Robinson, who I thought should have won. It really went downhill basically on the finale when Andy won, and the guy never amounted to anything. Got suspended, got released, haven't heard from him since. But anyway, the show itself was really good, and my favorite part about that year, too, is that you're also able to relive that show on the network now, which is awesome, so thank you, WWE Network. But really, really good show. Fond memories of watching that show right before Raw, then tuning into Raw and enjoying a great episode of that show. But yeah, Tough Enough, love that season in 2011. So coming in at reason number 6, Daniel Bryan is Mr. Money in the Bank. The first few months of 2011, it's kind of the exact opposite with a few of these other people. Like I said, their first half of the year wasn't really all that memorable. It was the exact opposite with Daniel Bryan. The first half of the year, they didn't really do much with the guy. He had a couple-month reign as U.S. champion in 2011. He dropped the belt, was left off WrestleMania, moved to SmackDown, didn't do much. Won Money in the Bank, which I thought was a shocking, amazing move. My favorite pay-per-view of all time, Money in the Bank 2011. And from that point forward, he had a great mini feud with Mark Henry on the SmackDown brand. He didn't do really much as Mr. Money in the Bank, but the moment when he cashed in on that great TLC pay-per-view, which stands probably to this day as one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. If I had to make a list, it'd probably be in the top 10. When he cashed in, it got a great pop, and he would turn heel going into 2012. But seeing him win Mr. Money in the Bank, or become Mr. Money in the Bank, win the briefcase, and have those amazing matches with Mark Henry on SmackDown, which kind of get forgotten about, especially the steel cage one, which I thought was especially strong. But really good run for Daniel Bryan as Mr. Money in the Bank that would kick off his main event run as a main event star in WWE from that point forward. So coming in at reason number 7 here, the Ryder Revolution, the rise of Zack Ryder. Now, I've been a Zack Ryder fan since, believe it or not, May of 2009, right when he was repackaged into the Long Island IZ on the ECW brand. Immediately became a fan of the guy at that point in time because when he was with Kurt Hawkins, I didn't hate him. I just didn't really care for him because he's a glorified tag team guy. But when he got the haircut, switched up his look entirely, got the all-new gimmick, it was great. I mean, it wasn't great, but I don't know, I just fell in love with the gimmick. The whole Long Island IZ thing, which I thought was so unique and different for him, and a great way of kind of, spreading him out from the pack. And then they wouldn't really do much with him for most of 09 or 2010. He was an enhancement guy on ECW and on in ECW in 09 and in 2010. But going into 2011, he debuted his Long Island, or Z True Long Island, what was the title? I always get confused. It's Z True Long Island Story on YouTube. That's what it is. In February of that year, huge fan of the show. Almost in tears when it ended in 2013. But very entertaining show, a creative way of getting himself over, which got a lot of attention from guys like John Cena, CM Punk, The Miz, and a few others who shared his videos on Twitter. And from that point forward, his career would also kind of kick off like Daniel Bryan's in the summer of 2011 when he was featured on Raw on that amazing episode, July 25th, when Punk came back, and Morrison came back, Jim Ross came back, Rey Mysterio became WWE champion, and so on and so forth. But Zack Ryder also got his first Raw win, I think, ever on that show. And from there, it would really kind of kick off his the second half of 2011 for him, and a great run that he was very, very popular for when he feuded with Dolph Ziggler over the U.S. Championship for the final few months of the year, culminating and also at the TLC pay-per-view, and then an amazing match with Dolph Ziggler when he won the U.S. Championship. Now, they would drop the ball on him in 2012 when he lost the belt. Like, a lot of these people went to shit in the new year. But Zack Ryder would drop the belt like literally the first 2 or 3 weeks of 2012. But before that, though, the second half of 2011 for him was fantastic. And he hasn't really come close to that since, obviously. But still, being a huge, Zack Ryder fan that I am and was at that period in time, it was great to see him finally get a shot at superstardom and take full advantage of that opportunity in being, riding that wave of momentum going into TLC and capturing that title and having a magical moment as United States champion. So reason number 8 here, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so reason number 8 here, the return of The Rock. And really kind of kicked off in 2011, or rather 2010, when Bret Hart came back to the company. 2011, we would get The Rock. 2012, it was Brock Lesnar. So every year we've kind of gotten a big return. This year I would say it was the Dudley Boys. And that wasn't really evident in 2011 when The Rock came back, but it had been so long. And for me as a fan, because I had yet to see Rock in any shape, form, or fashion in WWE since I started watching 2008, he had that brief, albeit very, very brief, video package on the 500th episode of SmackDown. Or no, maybe 10 years. I think it was the 10-year anniversary of SmackDown in October of 2009. and then they didn't really do much with him. I thought he would be brought in as a guest host or the anonymous Raw general manager, which really amounted to nothing, of course, which was probably one of the worst parts of 2011, which I probably won't mention here. But yeah, the return of The Rock I thought was magical. It was like I said, I had yet to be exposed to him on WWE TV up to this point. So although I kind of knew it was him because he had posted something on Facebook and on Twitter earlier in the day when he came back in the Valentine's Day episode of Monday Night Raw. So I kind of knew it was him, but I couldn't watch it live either. I think I was busy doing something else. I was watching a movie, so I watched it the next day after school, and my little brother was there too. By this point, he was long gone, removed from wrestling, but even he was shocked beyond belief to see The Rock back, was ecstatic to see him back in WWE. The great 25-minute promo that he had, and his role in WrestleMania 27, returning for Survivor Series, that whole year was an awesome way to bring The Rock, to bring the Great One back into the fold in WWE. So reason number 9, Karma's debut. I know this was very short-lived, but it was still a markout moment for me, which again, one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time, Extreme Rules 2011, when she debuted after months and months and months of speculation that she had signed with WWE. It was really more a matter of when she would debut and not if. And I thought it would happen, in the first few months of 2011, in January, on the road to WrestleMania. At WrestleMania, it didn't happen. And they would start airing video packages for her shortly removed from WrestleMania 27 to hype up her impending debut when she would arrive at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, wipe out the retiring Michelle McCool, and then go on to, unleash all havoc on the Divas division over the next month before she came down, before she got pregnant and she had to leave. And she had that one-off in the Rumble the following year, but that was then. She left the company that summer, unfortunately. But Karma, although it was very short-lived, was probably my favorite thing about the Divas division in 2011, because other than that, what really happened that year? We had Beth Phoenix as champion for a little while, as Divas champion in the Raw brand, and that was about it. Like, the Divas of Doom weren't exactly what they should have been. They weren't booked properly. We had Eve as champion for a cup of coffee. We had Natalya as champion for a cup of coffee, and that was essentially it. So it really speaks volumes that the most exciting thing that happened to the women that year was with someone that was only there for a month in Karma. But still, month or not, it was a great moment that I'll never forget. So moving along here to reason number 10, the tag team division. Well, the tag team division over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I would say, has really been fluctuating in the respect that it sometimes means a lot. You get a lot of great tag teams. WWE puts their full focus on the division, and they kind of die out, and it comes back and it dies out. That's happened a lot in recent years. It happened in 2011, died out. Happened again in late 2012, died out. Happened again in late 2013. It's an ongoing cycle, and that's exactly what happened in late 2011 when Air Boom won the belts. Now, that probably more so than the division itself, because the division for the first 6 months of the year was awful. Like, we had the fucking Chorus champions. We had Cena and Miz for like a night. We had freaking Michael McGillicuddy and David Otunga, who I still say to this day are the worst tag team champions in WWE history, or at least one of them. They just never defended the belts. It was awful. The Usos got repackaged, so that was cool. But everything else, like the champions, the people who were holding those titles for the first number of months, the first half of that year, were terrible. And then when Air Boom took over, and I mean, granted, it was an impromptu, put-together team, a makeshift team, as you will, between Kofi Kingston and Evan Bourne right after SummerSlam. They worked so well together. They had great chemistry, a great theme song, too, and they really kind of brought the division to new heights. And now Evan Bourne would get himself suspended in November. They kind of took some time off in the final few months of the year. But beside that, though, putting aside Evan Bourne's month-long suspension, they had a great run as tag team champions, a lot of good matches with McGillicuddy and Otunga, which were good, but some really good matches with RTruth, Dolph Ziggler and Jack Swagger, Primo and Epico, and a few other teams as well. And they, to me, were really the beginning of the renaissance in the tag team division for a number of months in the second half of 2011. Moving right along here to reason number 11, a great Royal Rumble match. So some might disagree with me on this, but I really thoroughly enjoyed the Rumble match that year. And people have asked me before, what's your favorite Rumble match in history? It's really hard to say. It's truly a tie between the 2011 Rumble match and the 2010 Rumble match. And the 2010 one was great alone, but also you got to add in the element that was the first pay-per-view I had ever watched, live, that I bought. And it was a great pay-per-view, and Edge came back, and every story that went into that Rumble was magical. And then the 2011 Rumble was different and it was exciting in a different way. That we got the returns of Booker T and Kevin Nash. We had the Nexus in there with the core. John Cena got taken out when I thought he was going to win. Del Rio gets his big win. The 40-man element. So a couple cool stories going on in the 2011 Rumble. And I would argue that it was the last truly great Rumble that we've gotten. Maybe the 2013 one as well. I thought when Del Rio won, I was happy. Maybe not a lot of people were, but I was happy to see a fresh face win the Rumble for once. Whereas in the years that followed, the 2012 Rumble sucked. The 2014 one sucked. The 2015 was good for a little while before it started sucking when Daniel Bryan got taken out. The 2013 one was pretty good, but then John Cena won. I'm not going to say it ruined it, but I don't know. It was a good Rumble for the most part, and then John Cena ruined it. At least the 2011 Rumble, I thought, it was 40 men. It was 40 men in there, but it's not like they filled those spots with jobbers. I mean, sometimes they did, but for the most part, it was a lot of the superstars in the roster, guys like Randy Orton and Dolph Ziggler and Big Show Kane and all the biggest names in the business, John Cena, and a lot of the Nexus guys, a lot of the core guys. So the 40-man stipulation made sense. But other than that, I thought every other Rumble after that kind of fell short of expectations. So maybe the Rumble in 2016 beats it out as being better. We'll have to wait and see. But I really, really enjoyed that Royal Rumble. Just the excitement that I had for it, the excitement that I had for Del Rio winning, the excitement for Booker T and Kevin Nash coming back. I mean, why 2011 was my favorite year, I'd include those returns of Nash and Booker T in there as well in that great Rumble match. So after that, coming in at reason number 11 here, RTruth's heel turn, or rather, reason number 14 or 12. Let's see, 13, 14. Yeah, it's reason number 12. RTruth's heel turn, and something that I did not see coming, which I thought turned out to be absolutely exceptional when he turned right after WrestleMania, and he turned heel on John Morrison in England. A great moment. It kicked off, in my opinion. I mean, there really is no arguing that the greatest run that RTruth ever had, I'm still in the Rumble match thing, that RTruth ever had in WWE was when he was the heel in 2011. Turned heel on John Morrison, was entertaining as all hell with the little Jimmy stuff. The matches with John Cena were all right, but he got to main event a pay-per-view, never got a title run, but it was good. Had a lot of good matches with The Miz, a part of Awesome Truth. Got a main event Survivor Series with Cena and The Rock. Who else can say that? So that was a great moment, a great match, and just RTruth was one of the bright spots of that year, as a lot of people were that I previously mentioned. Daniel Bryan, Del Rio, Cody, Barrett, a lot of those people that weren't used right in the following year, much like RTruth. But it was still an exciting time for the RTruth character, and really the only time that I was a fan of his, because as a babyface, he bores me to tears. So moving on to reason number 13 here, Mark Henry's Hall of Pain. Another guy who was in the twilight of his career, you figured he'd be retiring any day now, turns heel at the 2011-2000 WWE Draft, and from there goes on to embark on, as I said, a Hall of Pain, putting in guys like, of course, spoken of, it's only hypothetical here, but the verbiage or whatever. We had Mark Henry induct the likes of Kane, Vladimir Kozlov, The Big Show. And I could have done without the Big Show Mark Henry feud. I was not really a fan of that. But he had some, easily, the best matches of his entire career, other than the match with John Cena in 2013 at Money in the Bank when he had the whole retirement promo. These were the best matches of his career, in my opinion. The matches with Randy Orton, the matches with Daniel Bryan. The first match with Big Show was all right, but those matches in particular, the one with Bryan and Orton, and even the one with Sheamus at SummerSlam, I thought was really, really good. And, he was in the twilight of his career, yet he was able to rejuvenate his character and get over as the biggest heel in the entire WWE at like 40-something years old. How many people can say they've done that, So a great run for Mark Henry, and was really the highlight of SmackDown for the better part of that year. Moving on to reason number 14 here. 14 and 15 are fairly obvious, but I saved the best for last. Reason number 14, the whole Randy Orton versus Christian feud, who I still say to this day is my favorite feud in all of WWE history, or at least since I've been a fan. Ambrose and Rollins is quickly getting to that point based off the history alone that they've had in the past 3 years. But until they reach that point where their feud gets on the level of being like epic, Orton and Christian is still my favorite feud in all of WWE. Because that whole year was great, obviously, from the reasons that I mentioned. But Orton and Christian, it never got old. I mean, there were some points in the feud that were better than others. But for the most part, every match they had was either good to great to absolutely awesome. Their matches on SmackDown were great. The matches at Over the Limit, Capital Punishment, Money in the Bank, SummerSlam, all amazing matches. Christian, another guy, much like Mark Henry and RTruth, who was in the twilight of his career, had a lot of injuries, had just returned in February of that year, and had an amazing run as a babyface, as a heel, became a 2-time World Heavyweight Champion. I'm not just putting this on the top of the list because I'm a peep, I'm a Christian mark, but the matches he had alone with Randy Orton were absolutely exceptional. And as I said, along with Mark Henry, were the highlight of SmackDown for the better part of 2011. Some of the best pay-per-view matches you'll ever see were between Orton and Christian. The chemistry they had was great. The feud was great. Christian, I could have done without him losing the belt in 2 days, but it worked out for the better for the feud. It could have been booked better to an extent with making Christian look a little bit stronger and giving him more wins over Orton than he had, but regardless, their matches were great regardless of the result. And Christian was able to get his 2-time, was able to get one, as well as another run as World Heavyweight Champion. So it was able to, it did succeed in giving him his moment before he would retire a couple years later. So we get to reason number 1 on my list here. Without a doubt, unquestionably my number 1 pick, and you could probably guess what it is by this point. CM Punk, the Summer of Punk in 2011. That was quite the time to be a wrestling fan. I'm always excited to be a wrestling fan. Some points are better than others, like in the road to WrestleMania this past year. Or, the summer is always great, I've noticed, ever since 2010. Even, with the Nexus storyline I thought was great. That was probably the best few months of 2010. But even, 2011 really kicked it off. That the summer months are always exciting no matter what happens. But the Summer of Punk kicked off with Punk beating Rey Mysterio at Capital Punishment, and still one of my favorite matches as a fan. And then from there, they would Punk would have his promo where he said he was leaving WWE in mid-June. Not the pipe bomb, but also the pipe bomb a week later on the June 27th episode. Every contract signing that him and Cena had, and the matches, and Money in the Bank, still my favorite match of all time. The match at SummerSlam, just everything about it was amazing. That, like I said, quite the time to be a wrestling fan, which I define as, and it means, different things to different people, but to me, the greatest time to be a wrestling fan are those times when you just can't absolutely wait to tune into Raw the next week, where it's so exciting, you're left on the edge of your seat every single week at the end of the flagship show, that you can't wait for Raw the next week. You can't wait until SmackDown. It's like, I can't wait to watch. And this was at a time when I was grounded and shit, so it was a lot harder for me to watch the show, but it was still an exciting time to be a fan. After the whole first promo that he cut, saying that he was leaving the company, not the pipe bomb promo, the promo that he cut the week before, saying that he was leaving, I was like, oh shit, I gotta find out what happens next. And he cuts the pipe bomb, and I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Is he fired? Is he suspended? Is he gonna win the belt? Is the match even gonna happen? And then the match happens, and I can't wait to see what happens next. And I know a lot of people were not fond of him coming back in 8 days. I understand that. I would have booked it longer too, but that was another true surprise to me, something I did not see coming, in him coming back when he did, coming out to Cult of Personality and kicking off the Punk that we would have up until his departure in early 2014. That was my favorite period in time to be a wrestling fan. There have been some other times in recent years. The whole year of 2015 probably beats out 2011 as my favorite year in wrestling, but the Summer of Punk was absolutely, I keep on saying the word absolutely, but I can't emphasize it enough. I cannot stress it enough that 2011 was such an above and beyond year for WWE, but specifically those summer months. Everything I just mentioned kind of happened. This happened there, and this happened here, and overall it was a strong year, but there were points on WWE TV, especially in the fall, that wasn't really all that exciting. They were ugh, I can't believe this is happening, when Laurinaitis was GM, and the road to WrestleMania was okay, and I don't know, just the whole WrestleMania fallout for a few months was alright, but you pick out these different little moments, like the Great Rumble match, or the pushes of Mark Henry, and Christian, and RTruth, and Cody Rhodes, and Wade Barrett, and everyone else, and you just get a very strong year in wrestling. Thus making it my favorite year in WWE as a fan up until 2015. Now, I might make a video about that at the end of the year, either my final video of the year or my first video of 2016. We'll have to wait and see, but it's been a great year. It's been an amazing 2015 and 2011. A lot of these moments I can relive on the WWE Network because all the pay-per-views, and there's no Raws up, which boggles my mind, which pisses me off that we have no Raws or no SmackDowns from that year on the network. But I did recently buy the Best of Raw and SmackDown on Blu-ray from 2011, so I'll probably be watching that at some point to kind of reminisce on all of these moments. But I want to hear what your guys' favorite moment, or one of these favorite moments from 2011, or your favorite year rather in wrestling is. Was it 2002? Was it 05? Was it 1996, or was it one of the years in the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression, PG Era, 2015 too, like me, 2014? I want to hear from you guys in the comments section, on Twitter at WrestleRant, on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. All the links are down below in the description box. And that's it for today's video blog. Thank you for watching, guys. Always appreciate your support. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You guys are great. Have a great, awesome weekend. Like I said, 3 weeks till Christmas, 2 weeks till Star Wars, 1.5 weeks until TLC. And next week, speaking of which, a little teaser here. Next week's video blog will be counting down my top 5 favorite WWE TLC matches in the pay-per-views history. Not the match history, the pay-per-views history, dating back to 2009. So until then, guys, have a great weekend. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch you guys down the road.